Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for January 12th, 2026 at 6:32 p.m. Before we start the official meeting, we do have a joint workshop with our planning board, and then we also will have an additional workshop on the wage gave presentation. But before we officially start, we have a lot of new faces between the planning board and the city council. If we would like to do a quick set of introductions, starting with Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Doug Edwards, Councilor for Ward 1. That goes all the way toward Buxton if you're traveling toward that way on the left side and all the way back to Boone Road. Thank you.
Joshua Parks, Ward 2 Councilor and Deputy Mayor.
Ryan Pelletier, City Administrator, 6 days on the job.
How do you top that? Jeff Onman, Councilor Ward 4.
Will Gale, Councilor in Ward 5.
Tricia Hewitt, Councilor Ward 6.
And I am still Nathan Johnston, Ward 7 City Councilor.
Thank you. And starting with Jeff from the Planning Board.
Hi, I'm Jeff Brochu from the Planning Board. I live in Ward 2.
Catherine Palini, Ward 6.
I am Matt Provenzel. I am the chair of the board. I'm from Ward 5.
I'm Joyce Larry Clark. I'm the vice chair, and I grew up in Ward 2, but I live in Ward 4 now.
Emily Cole-Prescott, Deputy City Administrator.
Jim Muller, I'm from Ward 1 on the Planning Board.
I'm Charles Tettleman, the city planner.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. Thank you for everyone new stepping up on both council and planning board. We appreciate your service. And I guess we can go ahead and start. So the first item on the workshop that we have is an overview of LD 1829 and LD 1498. And we do have attorney Phil Saucier with us, who will be giving us a presentation.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Phil Saucier from Bernstein Shore, and I assist the city from time to time on certain matters, including some land use matters and some TIF matters. And I've given a version of this. As you imagine, there's been a lot of interest in a number of land use laws that the legislature has passed over the last few years. And so this is a summary of some of the laws that came out last year. And I'm going to start, and you can go to the next page, I'm going to start with a very short overview of LD 2003, which many of you probably know what that is. It's been around for years. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it provides some context to the new amendments. There's a lot of words on there, and I purposely didn't blow it up because just to show you that this is the background to where we got to with LD 2003 and now the new law. There was a commission that was put together by the legislature, and the commission came out with some recommendations, and those recommendations will sound familiar because those are some of the recommendations that became laws over time, and not all of them. But this just gives you a summary of what they were doing. What came out of that commission was, the next slide is LD 2003. And it essentially had 5 components. You can go to the next slide.
Just the next slide.
What's that?
They're controlling it from the back. So
oh, I see. You can go to the next slide. LD 2003 had sort of 5 components. So first, DECD establishes statewide housing production goals. Again, you may remember this is all about housing. It stated there was a municipal role in statewide production goals and explicitly gave you the authority to regulate short-term rentals, which I believe municipalities already had, but it just made it clear in statute. It had a provision on an affordable housing density bonus. It allowed up to 4 dwelling units per lot, and it addressed accessory dwelling units. So briefly on each of those points, next slide. The statewide production goals charged the state, and now there's a new office of housing, which actually was just moved to its own standalone commission authority, but establishes these goals to increase the availability and affordability of all types of housing in all parts of the state. That's a general goal. Next slide. Municipalities are given a role in that, and we have to ensure ordinances and regulations are designed to further the purposes of the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Maine Human Rights Act to achieve those statewide or regional housing production goals. And we may regulate short-term rentals in order to help meet those goals. Next slide. You can notice there wasn't a lot of meat on the bones there, but those are sort of general principles that were put into statute. Again, very briefly, it established a new affordable housing density statute. And in short, what that did is it allows affordable housing developments that are located where multifamilies are allowed to have 2.5 times the base density of other housing. And again, these are all mandates on municipalities, just to be clear. You may not require more than 2 off-street parking spaces for every 3 units. It must be in a designated growth area or served by public water or sewer. It has to have affordability covenants. It still has to comply with shoreline zoning and subdivision requirements. So next slide, this was what we call the up to 4 units on dwelling units on a lot. Somewhat complicated formula, but in short, every lot it was allowed either 2, 3, or 4, up to 4, depending on where it was located. It was a growth area, 4. If it was not, 2 units. But, and this is something that's going to change when I get to the new law, is that it did still allow municipalities to establish density per dwelling unit requirements. So even though there was a sort of 2, you could say you could have 2 lots, you could still have a 1 acre, for example, per dwelling unit. And that was what some municipalities did to essentially, there wasn't a lot of change there because of that. Next slide. Accessory dwelling units, again, this has been law now for a few years. Accessory dwelling units must be allowed on every lot where there's a single-family dwelling is permitted. Can be constructed either within a lot, within a unit, attached to or sharing a wall, or as a new structure. They're exempt from density and area requirements. Setback requirements have to be the same as single-family dwellings, and it's not subject to additional parking requirements or rate of growth ordinances. So I just want to go over those briefly, because next slide we'll see now we're at LD 1829, which was the sort of large amendment bill, I would call it, to LD 2003. It pushed forward some more of those committee's recommendations, and also from the policymakers behind it to continue to go in the direction that they were trying to go into LD 2003.
Can I just pause one
Yeah.
second? So just for everyone's benefit, we did adopt as a city the LD 2003 ordinance provisions back in 2023. So from here on out is what we're really closely monitoring.
So this is somewhat confusing, but I've got a lot of questions. I had 3 different effective dates in that law, so parts of that law go into effect at 3 different times. There were 3 provisions that went into effect in the ordinary course, which for bills last year was in September. ADUs are exempt from sprinkler requirements if it's up to only 2 units. It amended the definition of the ADU and the definition provisions to include multi-unit structures. And, importantly for the board here tonight, it requires planning boards, the new law required planning boards to have training, a training requirement. That also is now in effect. And I'll have a slide on that. But otherwise, for the city of Saco, these will go into effect in July. They will be applicable here in July because you're a city council form of government. So you can adopt your own ordinances. The legislature gave a little more time for towns that are town meeting forms of government. That was similar to how LD 2003 was enacted as well. So next slide. So these slides kind of match up that LD 2003. So first, there were some amendments to the Affordable Housing Density Statute, and two of them. So not only now affordable housing projects can have 2.5 times the density, but now they also can exceed any municipal height restriction by no less than 14 feet or 1 story. So they can be higher than that base height. This, I'm not going to read this every time. The legislature added this to each of these provisions. The legislature also prohibits any additional review of documentation related to waste and wastewater requirements prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy upon receipt of written verification from the local plumbing inspector. I think what that means is it was a way to not have additional sets of review. If it already had a review at the planning board or some other place, that's all you need. I don't know if that was a problem that was happening in other communities, but you'll see that pop up in each of these provisions. So next slide are the amendments to the up to 4 dwelling unit statute, and this was essentially a rewrite. So I will go through this. So it eliminated the distinction between vacant and built lots. So now this applies to all lots. The statute, the law allows at least 3 dwelling units on any residential lot in any area where residential uses are allowed, with up to 4 units permitted in designated growth areas, or if it's served by public special district or centrally managed water system and a public special district or other comparable sewer system. So now it's really the 3 or 4 unit statute. This next provision is a somewhat significant change. So the law also established minimum lot and density requirements in municipalities. And there's 3 categories, and it does take some time to think through. So the first category are your designated growth areas that are served by public water and sewer. So if you meet both of those, the minimum lot size may not exceed 5,000 square feet. And density requirements may not exceed 1,250 square feet per dwelling unit for the first 4 units and 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit for subsequent units. If you're outside the growth area, but you're still served by public water and sewer, the minimum lot size may also not exceed 5,000 square feet, but the density requirement may not exceed 5,000 square feet for the first 2 units. So you can have a slightly larger dwelling unit requirement. And then finally, if you're inside a designated growth area, but you do not have public sewer, the minimum lot size may not exceed the state subsurface wastewater disposal minimum lot size law, which is currently 20,000 square feet, and cannot be more restrictive than that as it relates to density. Municipalities are prohibited from establishing dimensional requirements, for multiple units that are greater than requirements for single-family units. Again, prohibited from that documentation related to wastewater that I read before. And then also prohibits planning board review for 4 or fewer dwelling units within a structure. So any structure that's 4 units or below can only get a building permit at this, would only need a building permit. There's a tie-in to an amendment to the subdivision law, which I'll get to in a second there. So next slide. There are also a couple amendments to the accessory dwelling unit statute. So again, I mentioned this earlier, prohibits fire sprinkler requirements for buildings with 2 or fewer units, including ADUs. That law is now in effect. Eliminates owner occupancy rules. So municipalities cannot require the ADU to have be owner occupied. And some ordinances around the state do say that, so those are going to have to be amended out. Allows ADUs to be located on the same lot as and attached to a multi-unit structure. So that's a change. You remember before, an ADU was required to be allowed on every single family lot, but now it's also allowed for multifamily structures. It does also still allow the lot to be eligible for additional density requirements, and again, prohibits any further review of wastewater once there's a plumbing certificate. Next slide. So there are some other provisions that went beyond those 2003, LD 2003 laws. So it prohibits rate of growth ordinance that limit residential development in designated growth areas. That's a growth cap ordinances. So some towns have building cap ordinances. Now you cannot have those for designated growth areas. It amended the definition of subdivision as it relates to dwelling units. So the general definition of dwelling units we've lived with for a very long time in Maine is 3 lots in a 5-year period requires subdivision review. The same law was for dwelling units. If you create 3 or more dwelling units in a 5-year period, so like a building, that would also require subdivision review. The legislature amended that law to now say, as it relates to the units, it's 5 or more as a subdivision, not 3 or more. So again, their intent was to reduce the amount of review to get projects approved. That's the tie-in to the prohibition of the planning board reviewing any structure of 4 or less, right? So now, because subdivision for a building of 5 units would require subdivision review for 5 structures, but not less than that. Just a little other thing was just a little minor thing I think the real estate bars had in their mind for a long time. They also at the same time took the point of clarifying that mortgages do not create a division, because they did under subdivision laws. So say you mortgage part of your property, that could potentially be seen as a lot, and that caused confusion. So anyway, that was just a cleanup, I think, and then again, establish a training requirement for planning boards and boards of appeals, which I mentioned. So members have to be trained, get a training within 180 days of appointment, and existing members have to be trained within 180 days of when the law went into effect, which was back in September. Next slide. So those are all the 1829 provisions. I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit more about this first one, briefly talk about some other sort of late 1829/land use related laws. So the first one I just wanted to highlight is LD 1498, an act to address Maine's housing crisis by limiting municipal impact fees on housing developments. So that was a law that specifically deals with impact fees. Municipalities are still allowed to adopt impact fee ordinances, but they tweak the law a bit. So now those rate of impact fee, the impact fee ordinances requires municipalities to establish a policy document that describes the manner by which the municipality determines that a development necessitates an infrastructure improvement and how the developer's share of that cost of that improvement is determined. So some document that outlines how you come up with your formula. Excuse me. It requires municipalities to demonstrate that a required infrastructure improvement is necessary to accommodate the development and that the impact fee is based on the cost of the infrastructure improvement in proportion to the developer's use of the project, which arguably was already there, but this is now putting it explicit. So there's only a proportional amount of that project. Requires that funds be encumbered within 360 days of receipt. That's something that a lot of us are still trying to figure out what that means. The statute used to say that the municipality must use the funds for that project. Now it has to be encumbered within 360 days of receipt. So that could be problematic in the sense that sometimes timelines don't line up that way. You know, there may be a infrastructure project down the road that's going to be put in place 2 years, that's been phased. So encumbered could mean that it's like dedicated to it, but we're still trying to think that through. And then, as an aside, there was a bill, LE 1246, that was enacted that established a working group to review the process of setting impact fees. That group has been meeting. One of my colleagues was on it. They had representation from developer community, municipal community, and others, and they have not yet issued their report. But there was clearly some attention by legislatures around impact fees this session, and so there was some laws. I think there were some provisions to eliminate the ability of municipalities to, but that did not pass. So they did sort of tweak the language instead. Next slide. So other planning-related laws, LD 427, municipalities may not require more than one off-street parking space per dwelling unit within a designated growth area, and must allow for the use of off-site parking agreements located within a quarter mile of the development site to satisfy those requirements. So those developers could have an agreement, a contract with a parking lot that would satisfy it. LD 997 requires municipalities to allow residential units within buildings located in areas zoned for commercial use. That probably already happens in most towns, but I guess there are some districts that maybe it was commercial only, and that was, again, the legislature trying to open up opportunities for housing. LD 1143 changed one of the optional setback variances that municipalities can adopt. It's called the setback variance for single-family dwelling, it used to be called. Now that setback variance can be also requested for any dwelling, multifamily dwellings as well. Next slide. LD 1184, this is the tie-in really to the statewide production goals I mentioned. So this requires municipalities with more than 4,000 residents to report building permit data and certificate of occupancy data, including for affordable units. And reporting begins actually this month. And there's a series of, and I know most of our code officers know about it, but the information has to be given in a certain way. So the number of residential categorized in single family with ADUs, 2 to 4 family, more than 4 family, number of units permitted and demolished, number of certificate of occupancy for affordable housing, and so on. So there's data that needs to be reported to the state. LD 1428, I've got a number of questions about this one. Child care and family child care providers are a permitted use in areas zoned for residential properties. And those entities may operate without outdoor recreation space if a public recreational space is available within a reasonable distance from that provider. And so that essentially legalized childcare services everywhere there's housing allowed. And then I like to throw this in because I get a random number of questions about chickens, but the legislature likes to talk about chickens, and the municipalities cannot prohibit people from keeping chickens on their residential property. You can still have reasonable regulations in our view, but yeah, so. That is most of the laws. There's still a few more. I will just mention that I believe, I have not seen the printed version of it, but I understand that there is going to be another, what they're calling a, quote, fix bill to LD 1829. That's going to be, some of those provisions, like I said, we don't know what that means. I think the intent of the sponsor and some other members who supported it are to address some of those provisions and to provide clarity. What I understand is the intent is not to substantively change it, but instead to have some clarifying at it. So I'm eagerly awaiting that draft when it's printed. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Attorney Saucier from Planning Board or Council? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you.
I see.
I'm trying to figure out how to address this without getting overly emotional. I mean, and I recognize you're totally the wrong person for this. You're just providing us the information, as is Planning Board and Council sitting here. I come repeatedly every time I look at these, and, I guess I'll say, excuse my language, but what the hell are we doing here? Like, what is the purpose of all these changes without a guarantee of affordability? All I see is benefits to developers, which, hey, they're part of our society too, and I'm not criticizing that. What I see is massive ramifications for our municipalities. And I guess I'll just leave it there because, like I said, this is probably the wrong forum for my issues with all these new changes. But I do have a question as an attorney, and again, perhaps you're the wrong attorney for this question, but ever since I've seen these changes, I've questioned, along with several former councilors, what is the municipality's ability to challenge these? Because these are mandates, as you stated. And again, as an elected member of an elected body, I'm challenged with mandates coming from another elected body when there was very little input that was asked of the municipalities. Even our, professional union, so to speak, with Maine Municipal Association seemed to be, punched in the face every time they turned around with this question. So I guess, again, like I said, maybe perhaps you can't answer it, but is there an ability for the municipalities to challenge this legislation, and what would that look like?
I suppose a municipality could challenge it. I would say that, and I'm not aware of any challenges that were filed for LD 2003, but the legislature does have the ability to overrule home rule when it chooses to. So they have to be explicit about that. And an example of that I often use in this context is shoreland zoning, which has been around a long time. Right, so the legislature made a determination that that was a statewide issue. It was an express preemption of municipal home rule, and municipalities are required to enforce it. In fact, under shoreland zoning, if you don't adopt your ordinance, the state will do it for you, even. Yeah. And if you look on the DP's website, you'll see some state-mandated ordinances around the state. The legislature, interestingly enough, did not do that here. So they did expressly preempt, and our Maine Constitution allows them to do that. But they didn't say, if you don't do it, we're going to adopt it, right? So one of the challenges, especially in LD 2003 too, is that means municipalities have a bunch of work to do to update your ordinances to avoid any confusion and potential litigation from an applicant who, if you still have your ordinances on the books, the planning board is put in a difficult position of having to potentially apply its own ordinances that are now in conflict with state law, and that, in our view, would undoubtedly lead to litigation. And so it's best to clean up your ordinances, but that is a democratic process that you guys have to go through. And sometimes towns took some time, or there was disagreement with that. And I don't know where we are today, but I think most towns have amended their ordinances. I don't know exactly the number. But
Well, I appreciate that.
It's also the legislative process. The last thing I would say is that the one way to challenge is obviously through the
Okay,
legislative
that helps. Again, I understand the state's ability to overrule home rule, but I also recognize that home rule authority has been a very long-standing practice at the municipal level in the state of Maine for decades upon decades. This is, again, with respect to shoreline, I understand that, but there's a purpose for that. It's protect a national resource. Right. This seems to be a blanket stated purpose of affordability for housing, and I'm still looking at all these changes. The city of Saco has been a progressive community all the way back to 1964 when we first adopted the comp plan. That was not mandated by the state until the 1980s. So we've always looked towards managed growth. We specifically adopted a revision of the zoning ordinance in 2019, 2020. A lot of time and effort, a lot of money went into that. And a few short years later, we have the state coming in going, okay, well, let's throw baby out with the bathwater for Saco and everybody else, not recognizing the time and energy that has gone into that. More specifically, not every community is the same. So I'm challenged with this idea that we can just blanket and say, you're going to do this, all these municipalities, Saco's not the same as Biddeford, Biddeford's not the same as Gray, and so on and so forth. And a lot of these are majorly substantial, and I don't understand, I don't expect everybody to grasp that, what these changes are when you read them on paper. I'm very visual. I like to take things and try to figure it out and draw it out. I think the LD 2003, we have yet to see how substantial those changes are. And now we're layering more on top of that. And I'm just, as an elected official and one that listens to my community members, and they're very actively involved in Saco, I'm challenged with this notion that we're just going to say, hey, we're going to change all these things. I mean, I could go through the list and give you reasons why we shouldn't. But like I said, wrong forum. So long story short, what I will say to our new administrator is I, as 1/7 of council, is very interested in joining Scarborough with their recent resolution, passing our own resolution in opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Hewitt.
Quick question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but can you tell me what is the definition right now in York County for what is an affordable housing?
Yeah, so there is a definition in state law, at least as it relates to these, I brought the statute so I can read it to you. The affordable housing density provision included a definition. So affordable housing, it's different for rental and owned. So rental housing, a development in which the household income does not exceed 80% of the median income for the areas defined by the U.S. Housing and Urban Development, and in which renters can afford 51% of the units in the development without spending more than 30% of the household's monthly income on housing costs. And then for owned housing, a development that whose household does not exceed 120% of the median income of the area and can afford 51% of the units in the development without spending more than 30% of the monthly household income on housing.
And we did adopt the statutory provisions of affordable housing when we did the LD 2003 ordinance revisions.
I'm just wondering what are the dollar amounts for what's an affordable rent and what's an affordable home, a home or living space?
I apologize, I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know if
Yeah, we can get that for you. So it changes a little bit every year depending on the area median income. And then you also have to look at if it's a family of 2, 3, 4. A lot of what we do for planning purposes, we kind of look at the family of 4, but we can certainly send that as a follow-up out to the council.
Thank you.
And again, and that applies only to developments that are qualified as affordable housing that get the density bonus and now the height bonus.
Councilor Gale?
You had mentioned a bill that collects data that's beginning, I think, the end of this month.
Yeah.
What's the data being used for, and is there any, I mean, you'd mentioned that's how they're going to be measuring goals.
Yeah,
but
I don't know exactly. I mean, but what I understand, just sort of talking around, is that it allows the state housing office that's charged with implementing these laws and doing rulemaking to have data to help determine whether, first of all, if LD 2003 is working and now 1829 is working, but also I think to start helping inform the statewide housing production goals, which they'll need to develop. So it's those two things. I think it's data gathering. And it was limited to, towns over 4,000. That happens from time to time, through the legislative process. For example, building code only applies to, towns over 4,000, so that's probably why they use that number. Building code, just to follow up on, and I appreciate your perspective, and I'll refrain from, I'm neutral on this. But just remind me that there's a couple other sort of landing. They certainly have done more than they have in the past on planning and land use of municipalities. But in addition to shoreline zoning, the building code is a statewide mandate at this point, and also the subdivision law is a longstanding requirement that municipalities have to in the land use area.
And I believe, I just got light information, so unfortunately I cannot remember the bill number, but I think there's one right now for residents or for owners that they're trying to create a database that owners are going to have to register their properties.
I'm not aware of that, but.
Yeah, it just came through our coalition meeting the other day. I think it was in that the tracker, everybody got the tracker that I sent out with all of the current bills, carryover bills. But yeah, so they're putting it on the owners as well, I believe, and again, I can get some more information on that one.
Okay.
As far as data collecting. With the impact fee bill, is that, it stated developers, is that just for subdivisions or larger units? So if a homeowner is putting an ADU on, do they have restrictions? Are they looking at municipalities and how we're calculating as well as what we're charging? Are they coming down and telling us what we can charge yet?
No, but they're saying that you have to have a process for that, which is, I think you already really did, but they now require this, calling it a policy document. Okay. So some sort of backup to essentially on how you're setting those fees. The working group that was established, I think they're going to look at different things, but they can only make recommendations about how these would be implemented. But
I think the biggest thing for staff to review and report back to council on impact fees is the timeline considerations, which, as Attorney Saucier mentioned, it's not 100% clear yet.
Right.
Any planning board members? Jeff, we'll start with Jeff and go down.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just kind of welcoming the new councilors. When I first started on planning board some 6 years ago, I thought that it was a little bit more involved with planning, and our roles are really a little bit more defined. We're more of a checks and balances, a review body of the existing ordinances. We're really taking the ordinances that you as council have adopted and sent down, and then checking those with the applications before us. Our involvement with planning really kind of is limited to this sort of communication or a review of a policy and a reference back to you. So a lot of our abilities, even though in my mind we call it a planning board, they're making decisions on where they want the community to go, that's really dictated by you as the council. And when I sit here and look at LD 1829, I too am very kind of taken. There are some very drastic changes here that are being forced upon our community. So the decades of volunteers that sat in your board seats or in board seats in council since 1985 when we first adopted zoning have been trying to weave a fabric of our community. We're trying to guide how we want our community neighborhoods to look, where we want our industrial visions. And I kind of feel like this is a very drastic change, shake-up. It's almost like a knife to that fabric. And I just encourage you, especially as the new members, to be very proactive. We have a very talented staff that has been following this closely. They're keeping us to date. But I got to remind you, it's your body that has to push hard and then make any changes that you can. You know, we can all listen to the height requirements and go, oh, that could really change how we want our downtown to look, and reduce parking requirements. We know that's always an issue. We hear traffic, but there's no additional review. My bigger one that I tend to have a hard time with is when they eliminate the further review for sewer and water capacity. They're just saying, hey, if the plumbing inspector, as they call it, signs off, the town can't review that. And I can tell you, having sit on our board, there have been several locations that you would not think about in our town where our Water Recovery Resource Division, who does very thorough reviews, say, whoa, hold on, we need to evaluate this particular section of our system because we have concerns. I'm very troubled when we could easily go 3 times the existing density without that review, that it's putting all of the city in harm's way. When they don't have the ability to divert and make system repairs because the capacity is more than what they designed for, that puts us all in a very precarious situation, whether it be a bypass, whether it be a system failure, whether it be an unexpected discharge. The flip side of that is on a domestic water side. I don't necessarily think that Maine Water is as thorough in their reviews and their capacity to serve, and many of your constituents who are on city water may tell you, hey, we don't have much pressure. Now we're looking at 3 times the growth without a real review. So there's a lot of things here that are troublesome to me more on the mechanical side. And at the same token, they really cut off your ability to put a growth ordinance in place, your ability to have additional reviews. And I get it. I know that there are young people that need housing, that want to come to our communities. I have a young person who works for me that's struggling through this right now. But we're not, as Ms. Hewitt put out, we're not really hearing affordability. We're hearing the opportunity for more development. What does that mean to our existing coastal communities or riverfront properties that now could very quickly split? And I challenge you to ask those difficult questions. And I don't know if Mr. Saucier, hopefully in some of our reviews, can help. We've had a couple applicants talk about deed restrictions. If we put deed restrictions on a lot, is that a viable option to limit future growth? Particularly, we review some that are really close to our traffic counts or sewer capacity, and you just allow an ADU, you could double the units, right? If you allow this, 3 times the units, it could be very drastically different. So, if we can't have a growth moratorium, is a deed restriction a viable option for new development? Or could we incentivize some of our other communities, say, hey, if you want to really preserve your neighborhood, if you get all your neighborhood neighbors together and you all agree to willingly enter your parcels to a deed restriction, what type of benefit can there be from the city? That we know there won't be that growth, that will maintain that character of those neighborhoods, particularly if the occupants of those neighborhoods are proactive. Don't know if it's legal or not, but that's something that hopefully you can take to count to city staff and to legal review. Mr. Saucier has been phenomenal at our trainings about putting things, you give him time in a very clear, decisive way to understand, which I'm very much appreciative of. How does it work? I mean, a lot of it is based on what our growth areas, I keep hearing our designated growth areas. Our comp plan doesn't necessarily always say designated growth area. The wording can be a little different. Is it time to review some of those documents and reclassify how some of our areas are? Is that a quicker way to do it? I know it's a very time-consuming process. We've been involved in a couple of those reviews, but is that something we want to be looking at? So those were kind of my thoughts, but I just really hope that you as the new councilors and existing council can push so that we as planning board will have the tools that we need, because if you don't give us the ordinances, we can't apply them. And then we're just kind of stuck in this position. So yeah, hopefully you can keep this at the top of your radar, because I think it is something that could greatly impact all of our community as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Is this on? Yeah, there we go, better. Thank you. Phil, to piggyback onto what Councilor Johnson had mentioned about the affordability component, right? That's so vague in there. And we've talked about it before, we've brought it up. I think the big piece is adopting a piece of ordinance that says you shall have X amount of affordability. We've mentioned that a few times, haven't quite got there yet. And how would that come into play with this? How if if there was an ordinance to be adopted that says if there are more than 6 units, if there's a project, you shall require, or you shall provide 10, 20, 30, 40% affordable units, something like that. How does something like that affect?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, so that's a concept called inclusionary zoning, and aware of only, I think, Portland that has that requirement. You probably see some press around that. So they have a requirement of more than a certain number of units. You have to provide affordable housing units. It used to be 10%. I think it's now 25%. So that's something municipalities can do. There's also some communities I work with that have affordable housing density bonuses on their own. They already had them before this law into effect, and you can go, to the extent you want to, you could go further. You could provide more bonus, for example, if you really want to encourage affordable housing.
Sure, so something like inclusionary zoning could create it would be another tool for any municipality to work through some of these items. And you mentioned Portland, they have a provision where you can opt out and pay a fee in lieu of, which some people support and some people don't, but that's another piece to that. How would that fee fall into the $14.98 as well? I guess
no, that's a slightly different concept.
Okay.
Yeah. So impact fees are directly related to the impact that development's going to have on your municipality. So the increase of roads, traffic signals that need to be replaced, all the infrastructure, schools, recreation, all kinds of different things.
Sure.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is a fee, in lieu fee, in lieu of meeting the requirement, you can pay your way out of it essentially. So
sure. And
that money would go, at least in that case, it goes into a affordable housing trust fund. Or a fund that the city then uses to incentivize affordable housing through their dollars instead of zoning. So
sure.
they can invest in or they can help match projects.
Okay. So Councilor Johnson, I think we've mentioned affordable housing for a bit, but I think like Jeff said about keeping some of the stuff at the top of the list here, that I think creating some resolution around what the city is looking for, and just putting it on paper, I think, is a good start.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. And again, I want to clarify, my comments aren't in opposition to affordability. It's to the contrary. My issue has been, and I've heard it through the years, where it's like, oh, it's going to be affordable. And every developer says that. And then I look 2 years later and the price point, $650,000. I'm like, that's not affordable. Not for anybody my age. So again, when I start seeing these changes from the state, their approach is, okay, we're just going to blanket everything and hope that the market, because you've increased housing, is going to rise up and all of a sudden it's going to be affordable. That's a bunch of BS. That's the history of prior to my life. You can go back and look, and that's what they'll say, and it's not the reality. Now, I've always been about incentivizing. Again, you want density bonus? I'm all for that. But what am I getting in return? That's been my approach as long as I've been up here from the dais. It's like, what do you want? Okay, we can negotiate. Life's a negotiation. There hasn't been much of that happening. And then to have the state come down and say, well, no, you're just going to do it with this, again, lack of understanding of each municipality, it really gets stuck in my craw. Because I think all of us have been working, and maybe it's slow. I've learned, gosh, I'm 42 years old now. I was 29 when I started. Government's slow, and I haven't come anywhere close to the things that I desire to see accomplished. And then you have the state come in and say, well, now we're going to do this. And all you're really doing is further delaying goals that I think probably all of us have, because now we have to do reviews, we have to rewrite ordinances we've already rewritten. Who knows what the hell's actually going on? I don't, and I used to think I had a really good understanding of the zoning ordinance. Now it's been changed so many times, I literally have to go and, I used to be verbatim, I have to refer and go, well, I remember a change, oh, but that change got changed. It's just not good government, and that's, again, what I said 2 weeks ago, and I'll stand by that, and it's not a criticism of those that are elected in Augusta. It's not at all our local leadership. I just wish we were included in this process instead of whoever went up there and said, this is what we're doing, and then it trickles down to us, and where was the public involvement? I can assure you, the citizens of the city of Saco, when they see what's actually going to come from this, are not going to be thrilled. That's the reality of it. And you know who's going to have to really deal with it? It's the planning board. right? We might get it occasionally, but then, as Jeff said, you guys are kind of sitting there with your hands tied. Because we, as much as I think we try to create good governing documents, at this point, I'm just really stressed about it. And I don't know. I'll leave it at that. I do have one more question on the substance of one of these bills. I think it was LD 1428, which was the daycare or home daycare. You said it was permitted. Is that outright by right, or is that still allowed to be a conditional use?
It's a permitted use is the word the statute uses.
Okay. So again, a small little subtle change, but that's actually pretty major because most daycare centers are conditionally reviewed by the planning board. And every time I've witnessed one of these applications, there's a lot of good, valuable feedback by the residents of the neighborhood, not to prevent it from happening, but just to have a good, functioning neighborhood, excuse me. So it's like little changes like that. It's like, oh, we're just going to permit it. That's it. You're gone, planning board. Like I said, what the hell are we doing? Why do we have a planning board? Why do we have a zoning ordinance? That's where I'm at with this, and it's incredibly frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
All right.
Guess we're not seeing anyone. All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yep.
Thank you, planning board members. We appreciate you all coming out this evening. Hopefully, we can take this information and move forward. Oh, wait, you guys are still staying. I'm sorry. We have a second item this evening. All right, this is, we're going to go into some discussion on section 4-34, which has come to council as an agenda item and changes.
So tomorrow evening, the planning board is actually going to be having a, what are you calling it, city planner, Tillman?
It's more of a training session.
So you're having a training session, you're going to go over the SOP to do some, kind of updates for the year. It's not necessarily on the agenda tomorrow, but if there's items from either the board or the council discussion, including the items that came in through the grievance report. I know there's some discussion on the floor back maybe on the 15th under new business. It might be helpful to get some input from the planning board if they need any edits to section 4-34. So I think that's why that was included here.
Any councilors have any questions or comments regarding that to the planning board or planning board members? Questions? Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding is that the part of the grievance was basically the number of number of appointments and the positions that they might serve as far as their professional background.
Yes.
I just have to say that I don't think we have a very long list, Madam Mayor, of people who are lining up to join this board. In fact, we've been running a little short-handed for several months. And while I understand the concept and maybe some history behind it, I'm also a little bit nervous about changing or making restrictions that might appear discriminatory towards an individual based on their chosen profession. So as you as council review that grievance and review that topic, kind of my preference would be, and having been through this appointment process 3 times now, is maybe I think that burden kind of falls on you as council and how much time is taken to review the applicants. And I understand it's the purview of the mayor to make the appointments, but it's the responsibility of the council to affirm or deny. And take that time to interview, take the time to have a good conversation and understand where that person's background is coming from and maybe their level of commitment. I think it's sometimes, a challenge just because of words. But we have a very nice cross-section right now, which leads to a lot of in-depth discussion. it's neat to have people that maybe come from like a legal background and technical background, and I think that our reviews are greatly enhanced because of that. But like I said, I would just be a little skeptical about making any changes here to exclude somebody just because of their profession. They might be a very talented individual capable of leading a meeting. And I think that's where that burden then falls on you as council, and take that time to truly interview, investigate, and see if their vision is kind of in line with where you guys are wanting to take the city. Because, like I said, we are not really in great depths planning. We are doing checks and balances. We are taking all these ordinances that, as Councillor Johnson put out there, change a lot, and there's a lot to take in, and we're seeing if they're applicable and how they balance out on an individual level. And then, hopefully, really making findings of facts and conclusions of law that put you or all of us as a city in a very defendable space as if a decision is challenged. And it seems like that tends to be the newer way of life. Oftentimes I feel like I look up and there are just as many attorneys presenting to us as there are engineers. So having a good cross-section of people that are aware of making the city a sound decision, a defendable position, is important, and not necessarily what their professional role is. So that's my feedback on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hewitt?
I have a question for the planning board. Do you find that, in your experience, if there is a conflict or you feel someone is steering a meeting or influencing it for their own gain or for something, that you have the mechanisms in place, like recusal, or that you need? Or is there something more you need from us in the ordinance?
If you want to answer that.
I'll start. I do feel we have those tools at our disposal. I also, having served on the planning board for quite a few years now, with Joyce as well, it's been a while. I haven't come across any scenario where I've felt any member has given any particular direction or anything like that, or tried to, or alluded to anything like that. So yeah, I do feel we have the tools in place.
And we do, just to follow up with that. I mean, that's at the beginning of each agenda item. The chair or acting chair will ask, is there any conflict? And puts that out there, not just for the members of the board, but anyone else in attendance to step forward. And we do occasionally have issues where members recuse themselves, or members will mention that they have some sort of relationship, and then we discuss it. And assuming it's not some sort of, obvious conflict like a blood relation or financial interest in the project, we can work our way through that. And I do feel like we have a pretty balanced board in terms of everyone feeling heard and respected, and not having anyone who's dominating the meetings or trying to steer them in a particular direction. And of course, everybody has an equal vote. I'd also, commenting on the proposed rules themselves, I mean, I'm the attorney that they're talking about in terms of attorney who's partners with an attorney who's working for the city. And I understand that proposal, and I don't have a problem with it. I, like Jeff, have an issue with excluding people who are members of a certain profession. I think it's completely unnecessary to limit real estate brokers from serving as chair or vice chair. No offense, Matt, to you or me, but I don't think we have that much power to somehow promote our evil plans. But also, the idea that realtors, I guess, have some sort of financial incentive to develop the entire city, and they're going to make money off development. Well, so do architects, and so do people who are members of the building trades, and so do people who own stores who are going to have more customers. I mean, the idea that there's something special about the real estate profession that makes real estate brokers unable to act in a balanced manner is just incredibly puzzling to me. So
Along that line, just a quick question, that if you were in a scenario where, let's say, your chair was a real estate agent or broker, something like that, and then there was an applicant, if that chair needed to recuse themselves, the vice chair would step in and take that chair position through that process?
Right, and I think we have had that happen where you couldn't sit on an item. I mean, certainly.
Or in any, yeah, not even just.
I mean, that's why we have a vice chair.
Sure.
Same thing if the chair had to recuse.
Right, there's been a scenario or an opportunity where I presented a project before the board, and I obviously can't govern myself, but we have tools. We implement them, as Joyce mentioned, before every agenda item. That's a question I ask the board, if there are any conflicts or disclosures that we need to discuss before we begin, regardless if we've taken the item up previously or not. That's something we get in. So yeah, I feel we have tools. Just to echo, as far as any one particular profession, regardless of what the profession is, I think there are tools in our code that we have at our disposal to address any potential conflicts, either true or what's the word I'm looking for? Perceived. Thank you. That's why you're vice chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Planning board or council, questions or comments? Okay. I think that's.
All right, thank you very much for having us this evening. And next time you'll probably hear from our city planner.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Okay, we'll take just a quick minute or two for the next group to come up to the tables. Great, thank you, everyone. Good evening. Next up, we do have a workshop with a presentation on the wage gauge, wave buoys, with Will Kaczynski, who is a professor at UNE. He has a short presentation to provide you with the information on what these buoys are, how they will benefit the shoreline for us, especially with regard to the implementation of the jetty spur. And then also the cost requirements to the city and the potential of moving forward with this project. Good evening, Will. Thank you.
So I'm going to do a brief.
David, you want to start?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm David Plavin. I'm the chairman of the City of Saco Shoreline Commission. So Will and I have been talking for quite a while about how we're going to monitor the effect or ineffectiveness of the spur jetty that the Army Corps is going to build. And I think it's pretty evident from just Army Corps dialogue and things in general that they're not going to be the most reliable source for having, creating measurements or data from the jetty that we will definitely need to determine its effectiveness. So Will has come up with a proposal where the city would buy 2 wave gauges we put one in front and one in back of the proposed jetty site. And we would like to get it in there sooner rather than later so we can do some comparison before, during, and after. So Will Kuczynski he runs the Geographic Information Systems Lab at the University of New England. He's a great partner, has provided all sorts of data for us, and I think the city is going to need to have as many data sources as it possibly can. There's already a few. There's a webcam mounted on my house that's pointed directly at the jetty site, and we have other parties that are interested, but this would be a great opportunity, so I'll let Will present, and then you can ask questions and whatever after.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having this discussion tonight. My name is Will Kuczynski. I'm happy to talk about this idea to put some wave gauges out to monitor the effectiveness of the jetty. Slide. First, I want to start with some context here. We could advance the slide. We got some grant funding to put this, a spotter buoy. It's a buoy that sits and rides the waves. You can see it there. It's this yellow basketball. And so actually, if you scan that QR code, you will be taken to the portal where you can see the waves in real time. So this is happening. There's a screenshot that I did this morning for the waves. You can see we got some good waves yesterday. So this will show you the waves in real time, and you can access that anytime, 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. So we already have this great resource. You can see where it is located there in between Ram and Eagle Islands. So this is really meant to monitor the waves coming in and hitting Camp Ellis, so we can see big picture what these waves are doing. This tool isn't effective for the jetty we're talking about. I'm happy to go into more detail, but slide. We have a more effective tool here, I think, that we can use. The proposal here tonight is to purchase 2 wave gauges from Ocean Sensor Systems. You can see what one looks like here. It's basically a relatively small black tube. The Army Corps is not going to be providing any monitoring of the jetty. They're going to install it and walk away. And so this would allow us to really quantify the amount of wave energy that this jetty actually dissipates, and if it's in line with their models, which I can show you in just a second here. One of the big challenges of this area is that the water is very shallow, so there aren't many instruments that we can deploy here. I'm happy to go into the details of why we think this is the best for this solution, but this is the only thing I've been able to find, well, the only reasonably priced instrument that I've been able to find that I think can do this job. The way we're going to deploy it is to attach this black cylinder to a mooring, sink it to the bottom of the ocean, attach a very small line and a buoy to it so we can retrieve it, and then that will sit at the bottom of the ocean logging data for us, and then we'll go out and pull it up by boat and retrieve it to pull the data off of it. It's not possible. It's technically very challenging, and cost would increase dramatically if we tried to do this in real time. Which would be ideal, but I think it doesn't make sense in this application. Slide. So this is a slide that came from a presentation by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about a little over a year ago. And you can see this is their model results for a 10-year storm, what they expect to happen. So it's very tiny, but in the top right you can see a very small map. Block E, what they're calling Area E, is the ocean side of the jetty, and block D is the land side of the jetty. And so you can see the graph on the left is showing you the wave height during the 10-year storm. The graph on the right is showing you the change in wave height after jetty construction. So you can see in area E, the seaward side of the jetty, they're modeling a 12% increase in the height of the wave, while on the back side of the jetty, they're modeling a 23% decrease in the size of the wave. And so this effectively is what we want to measure. Is their model correct once the jetty is installed? Did they achieve this target that their model said they would do? Similarly, they have areas A, B, and C that go down the shore there. They're adjacent to the shoreline. And you can see that A is forecasted to basically have no change in wave height. B is forecasted to have about a 7% drop in wave energy, and then C, again, a very modest drop as well. And so these would be tools that we could move. I think the primary objective is to understand, are the is their model correct for areas D and E? But we could move these down the shore and monitor A, B, and C as well. We couldn't do them all simultaneously. We could only do 2 areas at once, but that would be a benefit to this approach. Slide. Here is the location, X marks the spot of where we would deploy the initial proposal where we would deploy these in area E on the right here to the east, and then area D to the west to monitor a wave as it approaches the jetty. We would like to deploy these as soon as possible so that we can monitor the waves before the jetty is constructed, so that we can see if there are any differences in the waves pre-jetty construction. And then at post-jetty construction, we'll probably have to pull them when the Army Corps is constructing it. That's a bit unknown at the moment. But when we can reinstall them after construction, then we'd be able to see this difference of pre and post construction. Slide. So here's the very technical, the more technical slide on the wave gauge. This is what it looks like. You can see when you pull the top off, that's the battery housing. I've never held one of these for context. This is what I've gathered in talking with the manufacturer. The way this works is that it's actually measuring water pressure, and it's converting that water pressure to a height. And it's measuring water pressure at 30 times per second. So you're getting these incredibly precise temporally and distance and pressure measurements to be able to understand that change in water height. So you're effectively assuming that as that pressure change comes over your sensor, as the pressure is recorded there, that is the wave that passes over it. These are accurate to about 1/3 of a millimeter. So I think they're well suited here. And the processing can happen in-house at UNE. The company produces software that's freely available. If you purchase their system, there's no subscription, nothing. That will allow us to pull the pressure off, and then we will have to do some more processing in-house to convert it to get our answer on how much the waves have changed. Slide. And we have to do one more correction. So the pressure is going to be determined by the amount of water above it and the atmosphere above it. And the atmosphere is changing all the time as we have storms and we have high and low pressure systems. So we have a pressure monitoring system on the Biddeford Pool Marsh, and that's plenty close that we would be able to use that pressure station to correct the wave gauge so that we could work out any differences in the atmosphere so that we're sure that the pressure changes we're seeing in the bottom of the ocean are due to waves in the ocean and not changes in the atmosphere. If you'd like to access this data, there's a QR code there. You can see this in real time as well. And that's a picture of our team out on Ram Island. Here in Saco, we installed a weather station out there. So we're actively monitoring all kinds of environmental variables here. And slide. And so I think my understanding of the way forward here, if you all think this is a good idea, that we would need to draft an MOU between the City of Saco and UNE to formalize this partnership. Jetty construction could happen as soon as February, according to the Army Corps. I think, if it happens in February, I think everyone would be happy it started. I think it's probably unlikely, but I'll leave that to others who might be more familiar with that. We can deploy these sensors as soon as they arrive. The manufacturer lead time is, they have these in stock. They're ready to ship them to us when we're ready to place the order. We need a weather window to deploy these from UNE, but that should not be a problem. And then we will deploy these as long as possible until the jetty construction begins. And depending on how I think we'll likely have to pull them when the Army Corps starts construction. We might be able to then move them closer to the shore and monitor another area. But then as soon as construction is done, we would aim to get these back out to monitor the impact of the construction, of the jetty construction. So last slide. Just happy to answer any questions, any comments you might have. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments from Councilor Hewitt?
First question, Is there any concern with this that it's going to impact the marine life?
It would be we're going to attach it to a mooring about this size, and so, you would be potentially impacting, a couple
Small.
square feet of the ocean.
Okay. Next question. Is there any concern, I think it was said around $9,000, that it's going to break off? You guys have mechanisms or ways to make sure it doesn't, right?
It's always a concern, right? So it could break. Of course, we're going to do everything we can to make that not happen.
Does it
right?
have a locator on it? So if it does break and go off at the bottom of the ocean, you can find it again?
No, to my knowledge, no. That this would, we're going to need to affix the black tube to a mooring and try to sink it and attach a line to it. So if we were to lose the line that went to the buoy on the surface, then we could, you could potentially dive for it or try to go retrieve it on the ocean bottom. But there's definitely a risk that, we lose it, right?
Okay.
As with anything, any project in the ocean.
My last question. What do you anticipate the yearly cost for manpower and batteries are going to be for something like this?
The batteries are, I have it here. They're $110 per battery. So it depends on how long you set the data to record. You can get up to a year or two out of the batteries, or 2 months, depending on how you set them to record. What I'm proposing is that UNE, I would just cover all the costs of the deployment, the data analysis. We will make all that work in-house at UNE if the city will do the equipment. And so we can do that. We can make that partnership happen. So there would be no cost to the city for ongoing analysis of the data, just the equipment.
Thank you so much for your great research. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Councilor Gale, and then Councilor Ronan.
I guess just at a very high level, so I understand getting the data and then either disproving or proving these models that the Army Corps is putting together related to the jetty. What is the goal then of that after the jetty construction? Is it to go back to Army Corps and say, what you built us is not working? Or is it, because I guess I'm just curious on that question.
Go for it.
Very good question.
That is a great question, so thank you. I don't know if anyone was at the beach management seminar last week, and it was pushed, we knew this number in the background, but it was explained multiple times that they're looking for wave deflection anywhere from 10 to 30%. And the future is the beach management, because the jetty is not the final answer, the only answer. So in one respect, yes, to prove, we go with the 20%. So the after is like, all right, did the waves dissipate by 20%? Other factors too, like land damage and severity of storms since then, whatever. So that's one, but then having that data, and if it, say, exceeds well over 20% and things are good, we might have less action to do as a city. But with data, data is knowledge, knowledge is power to do things. With that data, we can say, hey, Army Corps or us, it only dissipated 10%, and this is the proof, and now this is going to justify us doing other things that will help with shoreline remediation. So, yeah, for small dollars, getting that data is key.
So I guess it's less about necessarily the jetty and more about gathering data for the future, either in our plans. I guess I'm just a little,
Well, we were all
I don't want it to, the Army Corps is not going to come back and put another nickel into this
10%
thing.
on it.
You know what I mean? So like, if it's for something to inform us on our beach mitigation or erosion plans, I think that's great, but just want to confirm it's less about the Army Corps and more about the City of Saco using this to move forward.
It's way more about the city of Saco, because the Army Corps is pretty much once that last rock is dropped into the ocean, we'll probably never see them again unless something is terribly wrong and we can somehow convince them they need to fix it. But I think the city needs to be able to have its own data set and be able to make its own decisions. And if it's not working the way it's supposed to be, then, yeah, we go back to the Army Corps and tell them, this is what this is what you said we were going to get, and we're not getting it. But I think the other thing is that UNE also does periodic beach mappings and movement of sand and, sand hopefully staying on the beach longer periods of time than it does now is going to be a big part of this. So there's going to be, the city, and we'll have a very complete data set to draw from at any particular time. So this is a piece of that, and a very worthwhile piece, we think.
Because as Will stated, this is potentially movable, so we can start at the jetty, and if at any point we want to reevaluate further down the coastline, heading towards Ferry Beach, down to Goose Fair, we can always move that equipment and get readings, which again will help us further enhance our beach management plan once we get that going. Councilor Arnott.
If I follow the math correctly, and I know you're also doing LiDAR studies of the beach erosion process, is there some anticipation to be able to take the wave energy data that you get, equate it with the LiDAR data and the erosion data, and begin mapping, if you have your projection of an event with 10 feet of sea rise, that you can make projections in a potential beach loss, which means you can then plan for the recovery after better if you know what the energy is going to do to the beach. Is that the kind of analysis that we hope will happen down the road?
I think that's very well said, and that was the big reason. That's how I got the wave buoy funded, was to say, we're mapping the beaches, right? We have these drones that are helping us understand the rates of erosion on the beach, but we don't know what wave, then caused that erosion. So now we're gaining this much fuller picture of, we see what the wave did, right? We see what the erosion did, and we can start to tie these together so that we can make more informed decisions and ultimately, I hope, save money on this ongoing coastal infrastructure, which is only becoming a bigger problem. We know the sea level is only going up, right? So this is a problem we're going to be experiencing for the rest of our lives.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Just to follow up to Councilor Hewitt's questions, staff is working with Will on developing an MOU that will codify those ongoing costs and the relationship between the city and UNE.
Okay, great. Anyone else? That's it. All right, thank you so much. If council has no objection, we would like to bring this back as an agenda item in the upcoming meetings. Hopefully, and again, rather sooner than later, so hopefully we can get the jump on the Army Corps project build. Thank you, everyone. Okay, that completes our workshops tonight. So moving on to the official agenda and the opening of the meeting at 7:50 p.m. I would like to call the meeting to order. Would like to make note of all council members present this evening, including our city administrator, Ryan Pelletier. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Great, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 4, we do not have anything under general this evening. Item number 5 is committee correspondence to council. Are there any committee members wishing to speak? Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to make people aware, one of the groups that I am a liaison for, age-friendly Saco, is starting something that sounds actually pretty great on the 15th, which based on my calendar is 3 days away from now. It's called the Romeo Club. They'll be having it at the Lucky Lager restaurant. The Romeo Club, which is retired old men eating out, is a monthly breakfast gathering designed to encourage social connection, fellowship, and community among retired and semi-retired men. The Romeo Club is part of a national movement focused on reducing social isolation by bringing men together in a relaxed, informal setting. Meetings are held on the third Thursday of each month at 8 a.m. at the Lucky Logger Restaurant located in the Scammon Street Shopping Center in Saco. So, and it's intentionally simple. There are no dues, no applications, no fees, and no formal programming. Participants simply show up, enjoy breakfast, and engage in conversation. I will say, though, it's not simply showing up. You do have to register. Space is limited to 30 participants. Though if you go there for breakfast and you see 30 guys there, you might be able to sneak in. But for more information or to register, you'll want to call 207-710-5029. You'll be reaching Age-Friendly Saco.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition. Moving on to item number 6, that is public comment this evening. I do have 4 members signed up on the list. We will go through that list first, and then any additional members wishing to speak will have the opportunity. So first off on the list, we do have Sarah Gardner. If you would please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay, great. Hello? Okay, good. Hello, my name is Sarah Giles Gardner. Good evening, councilors. I forgot that part. I live at 17 Pine Haven Street and Saco, and I'm here to speak about the Blue Haven LLC and mediation expansion and rent increase. I want to emphasize the need for the 180-day moratorium and the fact that we really need to start implementing a rent cap stabilization or workshop as soon as possible. The owners and the parties involved they've decided on the date to mediate, which is tentatively scheduled for January 26th. There's just no time set yet. Here are my concerns and my questions moving forward with this process. Just going to list them for you. My first question, who enforces these ordinances? And how would it be enforced if these companies still violate and break the laws? Number 2, how is mediation fair when one company has $67.9 million and myself, my income for last year was $42,000, and this year it's going to be $20,000. And they basically control all the mediation, and they have plenty of attorneys. And, I can barely afford one. It's not even playing field at all. The owners just come in, they're offered just whatever they want. It's $660, and they keep stating that this is non-negotiable. How is it affordable for someone like me on disability? Where the resident protection, they don't have to offer us anything. That since they own the land that our house sits on top of, and they can charge us anything for any reason that they want, just like the LD 1016 law that they tried to throw in there. Question 3, if they don't get their 660 now, what's to stop them from getting it in the loopholes after this is settled in the future? And can future laws integrate an attorney for mediation to make sure that each party is represented fairly down the road? I also just requested my rental lease agreement from them recently, and they were not able to provide me with one after I wrote to them. They provided me with the rules and regulations, which I never got when I moved in. They provided me a bill of sale, an application for the park, and some answers to questions I asked them, but not all of them. But that's okay, at least I got some answers. And they wanted my husband to come up and sign a new lease, but when the language is not, what we agree with, it's really confusing. I had to give it to the attorney because I don't even understand myself. So, I just really thank you for listening to me. I know my buzz is whoop whoop, but I appreciate you and to be continued. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, next on the list we have Kathy Dobbins.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And what Sarah has said, yes, we have an attorney moving forward with mediation. Mediation has not been...
Sorry, Kathy, state your name and address for the record first.
Kathy Dobbins, 28 Meserve Circle. So we met with our attorney last week to proceed with a potential mediation scheduled for January 26th. We're still waiting for a confirmation from the other side on if that's actually moving forward. I've also given you a packet of information that I think you want to read through. Since I'm here to ask for the 180-day moratorium and rent stabilization as well, the reason is in December's 31st email, a timeline was presented from the opposing party directly tied to certain aspects that we have no control over. And this timeline presumes not only mediation outcomes that have not been processed, we have not gone to the mediation table yet, and they are predetermined. We can't predict what's going to happen, if an agreement's going to be reached or not. And those timelines, I feel, have been predatory against residents because, like Sarah said, they have $69 million. We have raised $8 grand so we could hire an attorney to go to mediation. Secondly, in that December 31st email, they presented a new mediator. Under statutory stipulations, you're supposed to come to an agreement on mediators prior to mediation. And they're trying to get us to the mediator table before these steps are properly followed with the mediation agreement, the pre-mediation conference, which is now scheduled for January 21st. Those are kind of things that we've been dealing with along the way. Secondly, we've gotten some new information that after Shady Oak signed their agreement, they have been redistributed to Onyx Capital. So they have either transferred ownership again or sold. And we are actively working to figure out if this is actually true because residents from Shady Oaks who have family that lives in Blue Haven have said they want to do the same thing with us. So we're trying to verify all of this because I think they're trying to circumvent the new first right of refusal law. Also, with that being said, we have not been disclosed that they had an attorney until the December 27th open house where they brought 2 attorneys in and 2 park management owners to meet with residents to clarify the options. So they have not yet disclosed that they had an attorney to let us know because mediation is a power struggle. And one of their attorney basically said it's non-negotiable. Once we get to the table, the 660 is what it is. It's non-negotiable. So they're already coming into this with a non-negotiable mindset, and good faith is not being met along the way. And I provided you a detailed timeline of everything that we've been jumping through for hoops and bending over backwards to meet their deadlines and their timeline to make sure we're communicating everything in good faith with the 5 of us trying to go up against big money, basically. So I urge you to take a look at all the information we've provided you and start workshopping this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, next on the list, we have Brian LaRoche.
Good evening, Mayor McPhail and councilors. Thank you for this opportunity again for allowing us to speak in front of you. It means a lot to us. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Blue Haven and the
Sorry, Brian, name and address for the record.
I'm sorry, Brian
Thank
LaRoche over at 19 Meserve Circle. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Blue Haven and community members across Saco who are deeply concerned about the housing stability. Over the past year, Saco has seen how vulnerable and manufactured housing communities are and the sudden and steep rent increases. These increases disproportionately impact seniors, veterans, disabled residents, and families on fixed incomes. People simply cannot absorb this kind of dramatic change in housing costs. Nowhere is this more evident than in Blue Haven, where residents are still navigating the consequences of an unprecedented rent hike and incomplete, inconsistent mediation process. A report this morning on Good Day, Maine was addressing the critical issue of affordable housing and sustainable housing. According to the Maine Housing Authority, over the past 10 years, an increase of 187% of income is required to afford the median income price homes, while the median income has only risen by 44%. So that's almost a 4 times increase. This, coupled with the unpredictable support at the federal and state levels, further supports the need for rent caps and stabilization. We now have 2 critical resources that give us the city a clear path forward. The first being a rent cap ordinance adopted by Old Orchard Beach and Sanford. They provide practical, local tested models for stabilizing lot rents while still allowing reasonable, predictable increases. The second is the newly released LD 1765 report, which offers data-driven insights into manufactured housing affordability, the impacts of corporate ownership, and the need for municipal protections to prevent displacement. These tools make it clear that Saco has both the opportunity and the responsibility to act. Tonight, I respectfully request the Council immediately schedule a public workshop dedicated to exploring and drafting a rent cap ordinance for manufactured housing communities in Saco. This workshop should be in conjunction with and considering the importance of the timeline of the emergency moratorium currently in place and extension. This workshop would allow the councilors, staff, residents, and subject matter experts to A, review the structure and outcomes of Old Orchard Beach and Sanford's ordinances, B, to examine and findings and recommendations in the LD 1765 report, C, to identify the specific protections needed to ensure transparency, predictability, and fairness in future rent adjustments, and D, to develop ordinance language tailored to Saco's needs and values. This workshop is not just a procedural step, but it's a necessary action to continue protecting the vulnerable residents of Blue Haven who remain at risk without clear, enforceable safeguards. A rent cap ordinance would provide stability, prevent predatory increases, and ensure that no resident is pushed out of their home due to sudden and unjustified rent hikes. This is not about preventing reasonable rent increases. It is about ensuring fairness, transparency, and long-term housing stability for the people who make Saco a strong and vibrant community. Residents are ready to participate in good faith. We're asking the Council to take this step so that together we can build a long-term solution that reflects Saco's commitment to protecting its most vulnerable residents and preserving housing, affordable housing. Thank you for your time and consideration. And I believe at the end of each packet is my contact information. If you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to address them. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, and next and last on the official sign-up list is Lisa DeRocher.
Lisa DeRocha, 18 Pine Haven Street. I'm here representing my community and my committee standing behind me. We're here to ask for a 180-day moratorium on our rent stabilization ordinance. We're talking about real people with real lives that are living a battle in the park that we live in our community. This has been a corporate warfare nightmare. We're fighting for our rights tonight and asking for our lot rent fee to be capped off, frozen, stabilized, so this corporation will stop preying on us and increasing our lot fees by hundreds of dollars every year. They're already receiving enough from us. It's now a lot rent mortgage, not a fee. We moved into this community for affordable living on fixed incomes so that we wouldn't have to worry about paying our bills every month. Please vote for us so that we can continue to vote for you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, that completes the sign-up list. If there are any other members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Daniel Richards. I'm 7 Pine Haven Street in Saco. Been there for 35 years. Maybe even a little more than that. Anyway, I've really loved living at this place. But now I'm looking at neighbors that are on fixed income, such as I, that if they lose and get evicted because they can't make the payment, then what happens is their little home is going to be plucked off and a new home is going to be put in. It's a win-win situation for a corporation to do this to innocent people. I mean, dang it, I've been there forever. And not this year. I can handle this year. But next year, what are they going to do? Next year, I might have to look for an apartment. And those are right up through the roof. Well, anyway, I thank everybody for listening to me. And I'm speaking for my neighbors more than for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Hope Lambert, 14 Pheasant Road. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I did hear a lot about affordable housing earlier this evening. As I had said last time I'd spoken, there is a home that the park had put in brand new, double wide, with a good attached garage, $329,900. That sounds like a bargain, but you're not getting a mortgage interest rate on that. You're getting a chattel interest rate on that, which tends to be much higher. You're paying a $750 lot fee this year, next year, maybe more, the following year, even more. You take all that higher interest rate, that $750 lot fee, you add it onto your mortgage, and you could get a very nice home on your own piece of land that isn't going to increase year after year for that piece of land. You only have to worry about the taxes, which we do anyway because we pay our taxes on our own home, and then we pay the taxes on the land through these rent increases, and we don't get the benefit of getting, when taxes decrease, our rent still goes up. I sent an email letting you know about the two years, I believe it was 2022, tax year 2022, tax year 2025. Both taxes went down for the park. However, they still increased our rents. So they did not pass that savings on to us. Not only did they not pass that savings on us, they still got greedy for more. So it's not going to be enough. The $660 won't be enough. The $750 won't be enough. It will never be enough until we say it's enough. And we're saying it's enough. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hope.
Hi, Donna Stevens, 32 Pine Haven Street, Blue Haven Mobile Home Park. I'm here for the moratorium and for the rent stabilization. Just wanted to give you a couple of updates since our last meeting here. The weekend before Christmas, we had a stump grinding crew come out. They ground all the stumps, and I talked to the guys who were doing it, very nice guys. They were going to be working on that following Sunday, the Sunday before Christmas. And if they weren't done, I heard that they would not get paid, even if they worked on Christmas Eve day. They did a great job, though. Talked to one of the neighbors. She goes, "Oh, we got a present. We got the 2 stumps that have been there that should have been done a year and a half ago." And it's when I was going around giving out a form for what's been going on with the owners and everything. And I said, look, it's right before Christmas, the 31st is their deadline to sign the contract. They haven't done anything, so they are doing all these. It was quite obvious to those of us who are able to comprehend all of this going on, but there are a lot of residents out there that they didn't have a clue. There was actually one of the last correspondences about the contract that they wanted the residents to sign. It was almost threatening that if those of us who did not sign the contract, and if they got the 51% of the residents to sign it, that we would not get they called it a hardship concession, where it would be split in half what our increase would be for this first year, and then the next, in 2027, it would go up. So that really, to me, struck as a threat, that if you don't sign this contract, and this is right before Christmas, people are on a budget, they're already stressed out, they don't have enough money for Christmas, they get this contract like, oh, if we don't sign this, then we're really going to be stuck with the full rental increase come January 1st. I have corresponded with the owners a couple times. Some of my questions have not been answered. Back in 2024, I had 6 months of convenience fee for paying with my debit card for my rent. I asked for that to be refunded. I got an email back today from the owners saying they don't have any records from prior to when this property management company, the new one, Adobe, happened in February 2025. These were expenses back in 2024. That's not a very responsible ownership. Onyx was the company prior to this new one. That's all I have to say, and thank you for what you've done for us so far.
Thank you, Donna.
My name's Reverend Robert Henry, 24 Pheasant Road, Blue Haven. I just wanted to run down the history if I could, because you folks have been here. Some of you are kind of new to this, but we've been doing very well. It's just that we're not as practiced as they are with legal representation. I remember the first time I met you was when you came to our place. It's been different meetings, but and it's been going well. I think it's been going well. We've had momentum, and we had to get a lawyer. I mean, it's just over and above what you think we would have to do, but it's been good because now it's a little more level playing field, and they have been conversant to a point. But I just want to speak as a resident, saying that now I have to lean on a lawyer as well. I'm able to speak for myself, but we have to have people that speak for us in a certain capacity. It's not quite what it was when it started. We started out just saying, we don't like this and we want to do something about it, and something happened. I mean, that's just part of our history, is we got somewhere. Like you were saying about affordable housing, I mean, these are houses, many of us own them, most of us own them, and we're dealing with someone that, owns from the land down. And I know you've heard all the stories, and we do have some hardship cases. I'm very fortunate that my particular housing situation is that my wife and I both get Social Security. If that were to change, one of us would have to move out, and we own the house. So, and I'm not looking for sympathy, I'm just looking for understanding, and what we definitely need is time. Because we're moving fast for a grassroots organization, for just people that live together, gathering together to have one voice. And even that can be tricky. When there was lawyers there saying, sign this or else, I mean, some people were, very nervous about caving. And some people have gone door to door. Some people are just afraid. And in that comes is how well we speak to each other. We're trying. You see our numbers are dwindling. I don't think that's anything to do with people not understanding or not being vested in this. It's just that, it's been quite a journey for us. And please help us, because we're doing well. I think we're doing well. You would know better than us, but as far as Blue Haven Mobile Home Park, we're doing well. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Robert.
Hello, I'm Gail Janes, 29 Pine Haven. I would like to say I appreciate the work that you've done to help support us in getting to where we are now and entering the mediation phase. Having the rent stabilization and the moratorium ordinance passed and extended has been very helpful to the people in our community. And I would like to ask that it be extended for 180 days so that we can get through this mediation process without additional stress of high rent increases that we can't afford. So thank you for listening to me and us. And our community really needs your support and guidance in moving through this. We're doing a lot on our own, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished, but we are facing a big corporation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition. Moving on to item number 7, which is action items. Item A is one reading, the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, for the CAD RMS project, and that is Councilor Parks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
In 2024, York County, along with its affiliated agencies, which includes 16 police agencies and 3 public safety answering points, PSAPs, went out to bid for a fully integrated public safety information management software solution. This software solution will communicate across agencies throughout York County and includes computer-aided dispatch, law enforcement records management, mobile messaging, field reporting, and fire rescue emergency services connections. As a result of this bid process, Motorola was issued the contract. Fast forward to 2025, communities across York County have been signing the contracts, which were a result of the bid process, to update their CAD RMS systems, to tap into the best price, and to ensure the systems can all talk to one another. The police chiefs in Saco and Biddeford have been coordinating the drafting of a memorandum of understanding between both communities. Biddeford serves as the public safety answering point, PSAP, for Saco, so Biddeford would sign the contract with the understanding that Saco and Biddeford will share costs, with Saco paying Biddeford for 50% of the cost. This MOU is the next step to continue moving this project forward. It is important to note that this MOU does not bind future city councils, but provides a framework for which both communities can move forward. This project has been listed as a capital project item for several years and will be included in an upcoming draft budget presentation for city council's consideration. Be it ordered that the Saco City Council hereby approves the memorandum of understanding between the City of Biddeford Police Department and the City of Saco Police Department included in the January 12th, 2025 City Council meeting packet. I move to approve the order.
Thank you. A motion has been made by Councilor Parks. Is there a second?
Second.
This is a second by Councilor Johnston. All right. Any discussion or comments regarding the item? Okay. Not seeing anyone. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Onen?
Yes.
Councilor Gale?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, thank you. That completes action items. Moving on to item 8, that is new business, and that is a draft electric vehicle or EV charging pilot policy. And who do we have for a presentation on that?
We have Director Summers.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. It's my pleasure to present this or to have this conversation in regards of the Energy Committee that we meet once a month. And since April of 2025, we installed a EV level 2 charging station at the community center. It has been a huge success, but up until this point, there really hasn't been a policy, so we're looking to move a policy forward, which would be to maximize the maximum parking time of 3 hours at the EV charging station. To use the QR code will direct the person paying for the Flowboard parking app, which we have for the payment process, and the rate would be 2 times the standard rate for electricity per kilowatt hours of charging time, to be reviewed and updated every year during budget season, so it would go on the fee schedule. Kind of what we're looking to do, kind of talk about it, and whatever the standard is on January 1st would be brought into the fee schedule for the budget season to be implemented on July 1 of that year. We are looking to begin the policy on July 1, 2026. So again, to get some information out, to make sure people understand that there will be a fee associated with it, and the policy to be taken into effect during the budget process.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Director Summer? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Is it currently, I'm aware of the charging station presently. Is it currently free?
It is currently free, yes, sir.
Yeah, I had noticed, I was at the wrestling event, I think it was back in May, at the rec facility there. I had noticed that there was, it looked like, I'm assuming it was a neighborhood car, but they had just kind of monopolized it over the weekend.
Yep.
So I think it's good that we're moving towards a fee, but I guess my question is, what happens after 3 hours? So if with that instance, if it's a Saturday and I decide I'm going to go and take my car over there, how is the 3 hours?
After 3 hours, they potentially, during review of the time limit, they would be ticketed.
Okay.
Different than if you would be talking down at the beach. They would be ticketed at that point for expired time.
All right, sounds good.
Councilor Arnon.
Are these high-speed chargers, 20-minute, 15-minute kind of charging
They
systems?
are not. A level 2 charger does about anywhere between 3 to 12 kilowatts per hour. Averages about 8. So again, a car that's parked there for 3 hours would be roughly about 25 to 30 miles is what they're going to get for the charge. It is not to be a full charge system. It is just something that's supposed to be topping it off. Again, encouraging people who are parking there during events and activities to charge and then move on after that.
Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there plans for multiple charging stations?
There is plans, not at the center. Right now, it's just the one, but I know the city and the Energy Committee is looking at other locations and city lots throughout the city to implement them. So this should be the first and then allow us to have a policy for all charges throughout the city.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Arnon, you are listed as the council resource, and you're okay with that? All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, that completes new business tonight. Moving on to item 9, that is an administrative update. Administrator Pelletier.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ward 3 special election is being held tomorrow to fill the vacant Ward 3 City Council seat. If you haven't already cast your ballot through the city clerk's absentee voting process, stop by Saco Community Center at 75 Franklin Street. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you still have an absentee ballot in your possession, please complete and return it to the city clerk by 8 p.m. Tuesday using the secure drop box located outside City Hall on Cutts Avenue. This election is open to Ward 3 residents only. To confirm your ward online or for more information, please visit sacomaine.org. Warming Center reminders. The Saco Transportation Center at 138 Main Street is available as a warming center daily from 5 a.m. until closing at 7 p.m. If expanded hours or other warming facilities are established for an extreme cold weather event, we will share that notice broadly online, on physical signboards, and with local media. Local beach management plan meeting video published. On Thursday, January 8th, Saco held a local beach management plan listening session to give updates on the first phase of the plan and hear feedback from residents and stakeholders. To view the presentation video from the listening session, please visit our website, sacomaine.org. And just a reminder, Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is Monday, January 19th. City Hall will be closed in observance of the holiday. Trash and recycling collection are not affected by the holiday. The Saco transfer station is closed on Mondays as scheduled. You can still do many city business transactions online. For more information, visit sacomaine.org. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the administrator? Okay, not seeing anyone. Moving on to item 10, that is council discussion and comment. Any councilors wishing to speak? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Good. Several things. Starters, I'd like to, we obviously just had the public testimony on the mobile home park and all those issues. So, and I know there's, perhaps things working in the background, but I just wanted to publicly throw my support behind both the 180-day moratorium and some level of stabilization ordinance with the rents. I think we should run them at tandem. We might not have to adopt, the ordinance, but I think having them move together makes sense while they continue to negotiate. So with that said, let's see. The other thing, so I do have some comments. I was absent last meeting. But I do want to state before I make these comments that my comments are for the record, so I would like those included in the minutes. Again, I don't want my comments to be misconstrued as criticism of council. They're not, nor are they in hindsight, as I sat at home and watched the meeting. I do want to express my disappointment in the deliberations and the results of the issuance of the special entertainment permit for Riverwinds Farm. My issue has nothing to do with the establishment or the worthiness of the permit. The issue stems from process, the governing documents behind the establishment's ability to operate, and the desire to protect all parties. I would have liked to see council table the item pending further legal review based on the testimony that was submitted by the public. Personally felt, and again, had I been here, I would have gone right along with what was being presented. And I think the questions raised have merit in this overall subject. During the contract zone review process, again, I recognize many of you, or at least two of you, were, well, three if we count the administrator, were not part of that process. But during that process, there was a specific discussion in regards to Riverwinds Farm and the placement in the three so-called status buckets, or whatever we ended up with for a title, during an executive session. It was during that discussion that I questioned the validity of the August 9th, 2021 Riverwinds Farm CZA amendment based on legal precedent set by Dahlem versus City of Saco. Months went by, and lacking the political support of council to go my preferred route, which for anybody that had listened to those public meetings, was taking up every voided CZA that we had and running them through the process to create, again, current, legal, not, well, maybe they're repealed or not, ordinances. Like I said, there wasn't council support from that in the conversations I had had, and ultimately that's when I moved towards having a council resolution that would kind of put the buckets, so to speak, behind us and we could move forward. But I will say that on 11/17/2025, council acted on that resolution. My comments that evening indicated that there are and will likely be a lot of questions we can't simply predict or answer until they come forward, and that there are uncharted waters that remain. This comment was very much directed at the elements of this very CZA as well as several others. I fully anticipated council to address, clear up the issues as they presented themselves. That was, again, what I had come to terms with the resolution was that, hey, we don't need to hold up this entire process, but there are things that are going to prop up through future years that we should address at that time. Essentially, I was looking to, I just said that, take up those, scenarios as they presented themselves. Perhaps you were all satisfied with what was presented as information in the packet as well as public testimony. And again, I don't question your vote in that sense. You move forward with your decision. That's how life is. I, however, was not. I believe we collectively still have work to do. These issues are not simply going to go away, and very likely could lead to future issues. So again, I think that also that evening, I made what I felt was advice to council, which was act only when you're ready and satisfied. I don't know. I think that there was a lot that was left that should have been deliberated further on, but again, that's my opinion. And I will certainly move forward with the administration on trying to correct some of these issues. I did want to say I appreciated council enacting the changes to Chapter 4. That was something that was long outstanding. I think it dated back to at least 5 years ago when I first really saw the major issues with Chapter 4. So I appreciate you all enacting that without me here. And of course, I also owe a thank you to former Councilor Hatch, who worked with me on that, and of course, city staff that really did the major lifting there. I think this is how my brain works. It's all over the place. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Gale?
I guess I just, following up on that and some of the public comment, it looked like maybe we had 3 meetings before the current moratorium ends. And so I think maybe there's stuff happening behind the scenes, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to discuss this.
The meeting of the February 9th would be the last meeting prior to the current expiration on the 13th.
Yes. At least the 180, and I don't know if they necessarily have to be concurrent, but I think the workshop or looking at that ordinance would be a good idea. But I think the priority, it sounds like to me, should at least be the 180-day moratorium and not to let the ordinance get hung up or delaying that 180-day extension.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition. Moving on to item 11, that is executive session. Is there a motion? Councilor Parks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Be it ordered that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Subsection 4056, C, Real Estate Economic Development Credit Enhancement Agreement Request.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Councilor Parks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Edwards. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Arnon?
Yes.
Councilor Gale?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to enter executive session at 8:33 passes 6-0, and we will be downstairs in the conference room? Downstairs in the conference room. Thank you and welcome back, everybody. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Hewitt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Parks. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Arnon?
Yes.
Counselor Gale?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 to exit executive session at 9:18. Is there a report?
No report.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 13 is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Arnon. Roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
No.
Counselor Arnon?
Yeah.
Counselor Gale?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn at 9:19 passes 5-1. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.